The Philadelphia Phillies have been the Cinderella story of this postseason, and something that really strikes me about their team build is how well this organization has done in free agency, which has been a complete minefield for some other organizations, and some other contracts have gone very poorly. Now, they haven't been perfect, but you're looking at this team, you got Bryce Harper, Zach Wheeler. Those are two great signings. Kyle Schwarber was a recent signing of theirs on the free agent market. JT Realmuto, technically, yes, they originally acquired him in a trade, but at one point, Realmuto did reach free agency and came back to Philly on a free agent deal. So they've done great. Not perfect. They haven't. They've had a couple things not work out, but it kind of got me thinking about, let's take a look at the biggest current free agent deals across the league and just see where we're at. Have the teams been doing a better job at avoiding those minefield signings? Or is free agency still just a complete crapshoot where you're most likely to waste your money? All right, so here we are at Spot Track, and we're going to look at the biggest active MLB contracts. And I'm going to go ahead and strike through anybody who signed an extension with their current team. So if their contract is from an extension, they are crossed out, because we're only talking about free agency right now. Maybe we'll talk about extensions another time. But let's scroll on through. So you see Bryce Harper right there, starting off with the Phillies. He has the biggest, in terms of total value, is how this is sorted out by. He has the biggest free agent contract among all active players. And again, I think this is working out pretty great for the Phillies so far. A 13-year contract that goes all the way through 2031. Plenty of time for it to go poorly, but I think, especially if the Phillies can finish this thing off, that's going to look like a pretty good situation for them. And, also want to point out this right next to the total value is the average annual value, which for Harper was 25 plus. If we compare that to Corey Seager, who got that monster contract from the Rangers this past offseason, in terms of an AAV, I mean, that's kind of a deal. It's kind of crazy to say, of course. We're talking about baseball money. But that, on an average annual value, is so much lower than Corey Seager's deal. So that's another neat thing to kind of keep in mind is as time goes on, if things continue the way they have, this contract might not look bad even if Harper starts to tail off some. After Seager, you've got Garrett Cole, the highest paid pitcher on this list in terms of the total value of his contract. I think, Yankees fans could always expect more, as they do, but hard to say that's been any kind of a disappointment too much for them. Manny Machado is the next guy on the list who's also in Harper's free agent class. We got a couple extensions. Nolan Arenado actually in the news today because he's opting in to that Cardinals contract, so he will not be a free agent. Steven Strasburg, he's been in Washington the whole time, yes, but much like Realmuto, he was a free agent when he signed this current contract he's on with Washington. He did opt out of his deal with them, was on the open market, signed this contract, and it's been a disaster. This contract has been horrible for Washington. I guess if there's a silver lining we're looking for on this one, it's that he's been injured and maybe they can recoup some of that for insurance. I don't know. But not much else positive to think of. Of course, they won the World Series in 2019 before this contract. Not a whole lot of happy thoughts with that one. And Anthony Rendon, a lot of the same could be said there. A guy who is having an incredible career coming off that World Series with the Nationals, signs with the Angels, and like pretty much most things that happen with the Angels, it seems like it has gone very poorly. The next guy after Joey Votto, his extension, we have David Price. Of course, that's he's coming to the end of that contract extension. But maybe kind of, and we'll touch on this with other guys. Maybe kind of the story here is, there's usually a way to get out of these things. The David Price. That was going poorly at the point that he got traded to the Dodgers. Basically, they're just using him as a reliever during his time with them. But Boston, who signed that deal, sometimes you've got to front a bunch of money. You're not going to get a whole lot back in a trade. Sometimes you actually have to trade good pieces in order to get rid of that deal, but there's usually a way out, I guess, is the lesson to be learned there. Then we have some more pretty recent extensions in Riley and Julio Rodriguez. Then Christian Yelich. The next free agent is Jason Hayward. Sometimes it's easy to look back and have 20/20 vision, but when he signed this contract as a free agent, he was very young. You see there, 26 years old he was when he signed this deal with the Cubs. hard to imagine. He was not that he was like an MVP guy, but he was more of a very well-rounded player who was really good on defense, could run the bases, and he hit. And really, this has not gone well. And I think that's one of the ones that we'll talk about a couple of them later that were pretty easy to see going poorly. I think it's a little difficult, if you're being fair about it at the time, to have seen this one going as bad as it has. Chris Bryant, of course, he's in the first year of that. Well, finished up the first year of that deal with the Rockies. That one's looking a little sketchy. That one's looking a little sketchy. We'll see how the rest of that goes. Wander Franco was an extension. Marcus Semien, of course, much like Seager, was signed by the Rangers this past offseason. He got off to a very slow start this year, but ended up playing a lot better than I think a lot of people realized because he had a great second half, really turned it on. Again, only 1 year into that one. We'll see how that one goes. Matt Olson and Jose Altuve were extensions. Freddie Freeman signed at 32, this offseason. So that's why maybe he wouldn't be higher on this list if he was a little bit younger. But a guy with sort of old player skills. You could envision this contract working out well. Although, again, it's too early to say at this time. George Springer, a guy who has missed a lot of time over his career, and that's certainly kind of continuing to be the case to a certain degree with the Blue Jays. But they were a team that was kind of in their window, trying to make a splash, trying to catch the rest of the teams in their division. Won over 90 games but missed the playoffs this year. Rough for them, but that's not looking like a bad deal in my opinion to this point. Chris Sale, that was an extension. Eric Hosmer, there's one of the ones that was really easy to first guess. We'll say first guess at the time that it happened. But again, this is another one where San Diego this year was able to get out of this contract. They have to send some money around, do some other things, but they got out of that deal. He's now with the Red Sox, kind of ironically, I guess, to wrap things into that David Price conversation. But I think this was an organization that was trying to establish itself, trying to, give itself some credibility. And maybe that Eric Hosmer deal, in which he got overpaid, I think it was easy to see at the time. But I think that was kind of the point of that, was they were kind of trying to plant their flag out there and really say they were a legitimate team. And they've built that from here forward, from that point forward. Now, Hosmer didn't play as big of a role as they would have liked in that, but just something to keep in mind on that one. Jose Ramirez, that was an extension from this year. Trevor Story, a recent free agent signee, again in his first year with Boston, was hurt for a good amount of that deal for this year so far. We'll see how that pans out. Kind of too early to say. Patrick Corbin, this is a tough one because right now this is looking terrible. The deal is looking terrible right now, but they signed him. His first season in 2019, he pitched great. They won a World Series. So I don't know if this is just the Twins fan in me, just being willing to give anything away for any kind of postseason success. But overall, I think, you make this big signing and the guy helps you bring a World Series. I don't think you can be too upset about that. Now, of course, it was a 6-year deal, and it's looking like they're not going to get much of anything beyond that 1 year out of Patrick Corbin, unfortunately. But, what do you think about that logic? Am I completely off base there? Let me know. Javier Baez, oh man, this is looking like a rough one for the Tigers. Been an inconsistent guy, so maybe that's sort of the grain of salt to take. Maybe next year he's going to turn it back on, but very poor first season when that deal. DeGrom, our old friend Barrios, and Paul Goldschmidt, all extensions. Max Scherzer from this past offseason signs this massive 3-year deal, $43 million on the AAV. Just crazy. Obviously, the Mets are in go-for-it mode right now. Did not work out for them this year, but I think they're going to be going for it over the full term of this Scherzer contract. Yu Darvish, this is another one where it was originally signed by the Cubs. He gets traded to the Padres. He's still living up to that. I think he's kind of underrated in some degrees. And again, the Padres really trying to push forward. Xander Bogaerts, that's an extension. He's probably going to opt out of it actually right now. It would have run through 2026 if he opts in, but he is expected to opt out and not get that total value of $120 million. We'll see what happens there with him this offseason. Then we get to Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler, I think he was like the 7th or 8th pitcher we got to. And man, especially for a free agent starting pitcher, this is working out excellently for the Phillies. Again, it would have been a great guy for the Twins to get. I think they really thought they had a chance. But yeah, I think this is one of the better free agent signings of any pitcher, really, in terms of both how he's pitched and the value. I mean, it's not like they gave him crazy like Garrett Cole money. It's a lot, $23.6 million on an AAV, a 5-year, $118 million deal, and especially since Wheeler wasn't super established. He'd missed a lot of time. Kind of was overshadowed in that Mets rotation. He's really blossomed and pitching tonight for the Phillies. Exciting to see that. Again, as I mentioned, JT Realmuto, yes, he's been with the Phillies. Yes, they traded for him from the Marlins, but he did reach free agency in 2021 and it was on the open market. So I'm still considering this a free agent signing. This has been, JT Realmuto had a monster game one, hit the go-ahead home run, had a great game otherwise as well. So this is also looking like a really good investment, and I think he's going to cover this term of this contract and continue to play well. Obviously, injuries are the big wild card, and as a catcher, that could really throw a monkey wrench into this situation. But that's looking like a great deal. Jordan, that was an extension. Robbie Ray, J.D. Martinez, Kevin Gausman. Robbie Ray and Kevin Gausman from last offseason. So you see the Wheeler contract is almost kind of set even though it's been a couple of years now, it's kind of set the price of what a lot of these top starting pitchers are looking for. And again, those are pretty young in those. Luis Castillo was an extension. Got traded to the Mariners and then signed an extension. Blackman also an extension. Hey, there's our guy Carlos Correa. Of course, unfortunately, that's not going to come to the full term of that deal. But these are all ranked by the total value of the contract signed, not and these are active contracts, so it's not sort of if he opts out, it'll only be for the one season. And then we get a bunch of extensions. Joe Musgrove, Evan Longoria, another guy who got traded, originally extended with Tampa Bay, traded to the Giants. Alex Bregman, Ronald Acuna, what a great extension that's been for the Braves, even though he missed so much time with that injury last year. And our guy Byron Buxton's on here in the side the top 50. And then we have Nick Castellanos, who is in his first year with the Phillies. Once again, another free agent signing for the Phillies. Now, this is one that hasn't worked out as well as they'd hoped so far. So maybe this is sort of their landmine signing, their minefield signing, especially since they have him for many more years. But, he's still a guy who has a lot of skill. He's a guy who made a diving catch in a tough situation. Definitely not known at all for his defense, but he had a huge catch for them last night. So we'll see, a guy who might turn it on, and he kind of referenced this in his post-game interview, a veteran guy who might kind of turn it on in the postseason, in the World Series, and kind of prove to be more than what he was for them in the regular season. So I guess if we're trying to be fair to the Phillies here, maybe this is a blemish on their record. But, we'll see. Nick Castellanos still, kind of in his prime, maybe getting out to the more outside part of that. But if he helps them win a World Series, again, kind of discussing that with Corbin, kind of is all out the window for everything else, at least in my opinion. Again, let me know if that's a ridiculous stance to have. And then Josh Donaldson, I'm kind of cutting it off there as kind of continuing that discussion of guys who signed one place and ended up another place. Signed with the Twins. Twins traded him to New York. They got out of that deal before, he got into his advanced years. And now the Yankees are on the hook for that. And we didn't even make it to Kyle Schwarber, to that point of that list, who signed a 4-year, $79 million deal this past offseason with the Phillies. The National League home run king, oh, by the way, I think Aaron Judge, his home run chase to eclipse 61 was such a big story that Kyle Schwarber being the NL home run champion kind of got overshadowed. Kyle Schwarber, the taco king, last night, giving us all a free taco today at Taco Bell for stealing a base. Who saw that one coming? Oh, by the way. But, to add on to this, I don't want to make it seem as if the Phillies completely bought their entire roster. No. And developing is always going to be a huge element to any team. It's better to be developing stars than it is to have to go into free agency. As the Astros prove, as the Braves certainly proved last year, a lot of teams that have done a very good job developing end up having extremely good rosters. But, the Phillies, they have Aaron Nola, they have Rhys Hoskins, they have Ranger Suarez, Bryson Stott, Alec Boehm. They have a bunch of guys that they internally developed who are also key figures on this team as well. And another thing to point out, I think I have maybe a little bit more of a positive view or a better outlook on some of these contracts than other people might. But I will admit, we're in the early stages of a lot of these deals. Who knows, what 39-year-old Bryce Harper is going to look like at the end of his stages. So it's easy to shine the positive light when things are going well. It's a World Series team that's getting a lot out of this money. Doesn't always work out so well. So we'll see how things progress. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave me a like and consider subscribing. Thank you so much to the channel members. And here's a list of the premium members. If you're interested in joining and supporting the channel, $1.99 a month will get you in. $2.99 a month will get you on this premium member list. Coming up with some members-only content soon here. Twins-related stuff. So thank you so much for watching. We'll talk again soon.